take a moment to pray so that we can just center ourselves and be open to God's message. God, we have connected you through worship, be that through the songs we sing or the offerings we bring, or supporting a family who is about to raise one of our children. But in this moment of worship, God, we need a different set of ears. Ears that are open to your message, spoken into our hearts and our lives. So God, as you reach out to us, would you help us to be open? I pray humbly, God, that my words would be your words, spoken into our everyday lives. Amen. Well, we are beginning a series on the flag shown in motor racing, because motor racing is my favorite sport. Of course, that topic had nothing to do with why the sermon series came about. And what we're going to do is we're going through a different flag each week and what those flags mean, because flags are used to communicate something to a driver on the race course. So I was looking for clips for today, video shots of motor racing, and because yellows and reds are used during reps, and we had a rep for last week's series, I didn't want you to get the impression that all you were going to come and watch on Sunday mornings were reds. So the one clip I did find that was really good involved a whole lot of cussing, so we're not going to use that one either. What we'll do together is just understand some of these flags. We're going to look at both yellow and red because they're used in the same context, the red being for a lot worse situation. A yellow flag is known as a caution flag. And the yellow flag is waved to communicate to the driver that there's something ahead of them that they need to pay attention to and that they need to slow down. And that could be a wreck on the track. I need to wave it, is that what you're saying? Okay. There's a wreck on the track or debris on the track. So that is something they need to be mindful of as they approach either the next corner, or it's bad enough that'll be shown all the way around the track. There's some rules that go with that. We'll talk about it in a moment. The red flag is thrown when the situation is so bad that the whole race has to be stopped. And usually what happens there is that there's been a wreck significantly enough or significant enough that the marshals couldn't clean up the track, and so the whole thing's blocked. It's kind of like a tree that's fallen down across the road. You don't want to keep on driving. Sometimes a red flag is shown because of weather conditions. If it's just raining too much, you'll know what happens if you go down the freeway and your tires are kind of worn out. Then you start to aquaplane. Well, same thing happens in race cars when they're going very fast. So then they'll show a red flag. So let's talk a bit about what a driver is expected to do with a yellow flag. Yellow flags can be shown before a wreck because just like on any road, sometimes race courses will have a blind hill, blind rise. And there may well be an accident right over that blind rise, or maybe around a corner that drivers can't see around. And so the yellow flag is shown to them just to warn them of that. There's some very specific rules that go with the yellow flag, and race organizers take them very seriously. The first one is you've got to slow down. If you're driving that race car, you have got to slow down. The second one is you cannot overtake anyone else in what's called the yellow flag zone. So the yellow flag will be shown in anywhere from that point until the next flag or the flag after that, which is a green flag. You may not overtake anyone. If you do, then you're shown this flag, and wow, that's stuck in. In any case, we'll talk about the black flag in a few weeks' time. So there's a lot of responsibility that goes with this flag. And we're going to talk today a bit about moments of caution, or moments where we should be cautious in our own lives. And even more specifically, I want to talk about when other people, to figuratively say this, have had a wreck. in their lives? What is your responsibility as a Christian in that situation? And as Meredith so eloquently prayed, all of us are significant caregivers to others of us. You are an important friend to someone else. So when they are ill, you are there to reach out to them. Others may be in a situation where there's a broken relationship, and you as a friend are there to reach out and care for them. Sometimes folk are in financial help, and that's probably the thing that often people find the most difficult to talk about. But you may be a friend or a family that can reach out and help that person. So let's talk a little bit about what it means to be in that situation. And the first thing I want to talk about is what is required within a race car driver that would make them respect what's happening with this flag. And the first thing is to respect others. They need to respect their fellow race car drivers because of what they're going through. Race car drivers have an enormous amount of trust. And people will say, you know, motor racing is very, very dangerous. Why would anybody take that on? Well, it is dangerous. But there are less race drivers killed per mile than there are people on the streets. You have a bigger danger of getting in your car and driving home than you have of racing on a racetrack. Why is that? Because race car drivers trust each other. They trust someone else because they know what that person is going to do in that situation. Even a guy who's out there learning, or for a woman who's out on the track for the first or second time, the driver behind them will know their car and know, here's what I need to do in this situation. I need to respect this driver. And wrecks often happen when drivers don't respect each other. They lose that sense of respect. So respecting each other is a very, very important part of being able to reach out to someone else in a moment where their lives have wrecked, or something has happened that caused a wreck in their lives. So the second thing is, for some race car drivers, as cruel as this may sound, sometimes the yellow says, you need to keep on driving past the red. And that may seem a very, very difficult thing to do. But there's a very, very good reason for it. It doesn't mean that the driver who's had a wreck is going to be left out in the wilderness. What it says to those drivers is someone else is taking care of what's going on. Somebody who is very, very specifically trained for that situation. And if every driver stopped their car and jumped out to help in the incident, it would be chaos, and the people who are really trained for it wouldn't be able to get in that moment. And what they've got to do in that moment as drivers, they've got to trust someone else to care for that person. So part of our ability to care for others means that at some points, we need to not interfere. We need to not get in everyone else's business. And respect the fact that there may be someone else who's better qualified to help. That doesn't mean you don't care. Doesn't mean that you can't care. We'll get into that in a moment. Then the other thing that drivers need to do, and this is the clip I really wished I could have shown to you, was a situation in, there's a Grand Prix they have every week in Long Beach, California. Every year in Long Beach, California. Sorry, I was just expressing my desire there. That they have every year in California. It's the same cars that race the Indianapolis 500. So, pretty quick. But before that race, they had the celebrity race. They take, everyday street cars and put a roll cage in them, and this, safety seat, and wrap these drivers up in race suits and put helmets on them, and they do give them some training. But a lot of them, training doesn't always help you to be quite the person you need to be. So there's this incident where there's a wreck that's happened, and so all the cars have lined up behind each other because a yellow flag is being shown, and you shouldn't be overtaking someone else. And someone just comes barreling down the line, passing every single one, and the driver where the camera is in the car just starts cussing and yelling at the guy who's passing, and shouldn't be doing that. Well, one would tend to think that a race car driver really would be more concerned about the person that was involved in the wreck than about which how they're going to place in the race. But sometimes it happens. They get so wrapped up in what they're doing that they forget the reason why the yellow flag is being shown. And sometimes, friends, it's the same thing in life. We get so wrapped up in what we're doing that we forget about others whose lives are falling apart. So those are the things that race car drivers are called to do. They need to respect others and trust them. Your friends need to be able to respect you and trust you. Sometimes you need to just stay out of it. Doesn't mean you can't care, doesn't mean you can't love. But sometimes, friends, we need to stop interfering where there are better people who are qualified to help. And then the other thing I think about caring for others when their lives are going through a very difficult patch is that we can get so wrapped up in our own thing and our own stuff that we're more concerned about where we place in life than we are about the person whose life is just becoming absolutely unraveled. So one of the core things to a yellow flag, and in fact even to the red flag, to the yellow flag is slow down. When this flag gets waved, the driver, the number one thing they've got to remember is slow down. And I think that's very true as Christians as well. We all speak about the rat race and the pace of life, and how's it that you're all of a sudden 49 about to turn 50? I'm sure some of you in the room are in that place. Not me. But you wonder how did life go by so quickly? Well, sometimes we need to slow down. And sometimes it's not just so that your heart wouldn't give out on itself. It's so that you slow down so that you may see where others are at. Slow down. I think that's one of the things that God really wishes and longs for us to do, is just to slow down. Because we drive past so much when we are more wrapped up in what we are doing or what we have to do than what God's trying to whisper in our ear and trying to communicate to us. You know, what is incredibly sad is hearing on a news report about someone who's committed suicide, and people will say, I didn't know. If I'd read the signs better, I would have been able to help. Sometimes we are too busy. We don't slow down. I realize it's difficult. We have pressures in life. But sometimes we need to slow down. For God to work through us, sometimes we need to slow down. For God to reach out into other people's lives, sometimes we need to slow down. And allow God to work in and through us. So, let's go to the 2 Corinthians passage, because this is the point at which Paul says, here's some of the things, some of the ingredients you need to have in your life in order to reach out and help others. If we can start at verse 8, please Robert. Paul writes to the church in Corinth. He says this, Paul is on the road, starting other churches, visiting other church communities. And Paul writes to the church in Corinth and says, we do not want you to be uninformed, brothers and sisters, about the troubles we experienced in the province of Asia. And here's how serious this problem is. We are under great pressure, far beyond our ability to endure, so that we have despaired of life itself. That's how far these guys have been pushed. So what Paul has to say to the church in Corinth is, I need you guys to slow down. I need you to be aware of our situation. And it's not that we are just being persecuted as Christians as we start a church. We are persecuted to the degree. We are persecuted to the depth that we are in the place where we despair of life itself. That's a pretty tough place to be. And you may find yourself in that place. And you may know others who are in that place. And then the question becomes, what do you do about it? What do you do about it? Well, let's keep on reading. If we can read verses 3 through 5. Praise be to God and the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of comfort, who comforts us in our troubles so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves have received from God. For just as we share abundantly in the sufferings of Christ, so also our comfort abounds through Christ. Kind of get the hint? You know, the word is being repeated umpteen times because Paul is trying to make a point. You are able to comfort others because God comforts you. But you need to slow down in order to experience God's comfort within your life. You need to be able to slow down so that you can experience God working within your life. And when that happens, you're able to reach out and comfort others. So I need to be aware of other people's situations. And to do that, I need to slow down. But I also, in trying to comfort them, need to slow down so that I can find a place where I can be filled with comfort myself. Otherwise, if I have nothing to give, it is extremely difficult to give. If I have nothing to give, I am so worn out that I simply don't have the energy to deal with someone else's problem. And what Paul says is, be aware that you have a source, you have a supply, you have a means whereby in your being comforted, you can then reach out and comfort others. But if I don't slow down, how does God get that moment to inject that into my life? Just as sometimes we don't recognize the signs, sometimes we don't always have the words. What do you say to someone whom you have visited at home or in hospital, week after week, month after month, because they have a terminal illness? And every time you pray with them, you want to keep those words. May God heal you. But at times, I think we've all been in a place where we begin to wonder, what do I pray in this prayer? Don't give up. Well, sometimes those seem like empty words when you can see that your friend is in absolute despair. Sometimes those words are hard to find. But just being there can be a comfort to others. Just praying for them can be a comfort to others. In fact, Paul says a little bit later in his passage, you need to be able to pray. In fact, that's what's helped. Why don't we go straight to that verse 11. Paul says, even though we despaired in life, even though we were at a point where we were ready to give up, Paul says, you were able to help us by your prayers. And then many will give thanks on your behalf for the gracious favor granted to us in the answer to the prayers of men. A few years ago, I was hospitalized. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. And what had happened just caused me to be absolutely exhausted. It was one of those things where just as you were about to drop off to sleep, some nurse would want to come and take blood out of both of your arms. And then you dropped off to sleep, and then they wanted to bring you hospital food. And then you dropped off to sleep, and some doctor wanted to come and check in on you. And I reached a point where I needed every strength that I had within me to deal with what I was going through, both emotionally and physically. And those of you who were around at that stage, you will probably remember that I said, not only in hospital, but the 3 months that it took me to recover after that, please don't come and visit me. If you call me, pray for me. And that was a difficult thing to do for many of you. There was a great stretching moment, but I counted on your prayers. I counted on your prayers. Perhaps in that moment, all three of those things that we've spoken about were all combined into one. I needed to let other people take care of me because they knew what they were doing. I needed to be able to know that I could count on you to comfort me. And even though sometimes it was frustrating because you wanted to drop by and just say hi, your prayers were what I needed in that moment. Words and conversations and a 30-minute visit would not have done as much for me. In fact, it was very draining for those who did come by and visit. Your prayers were what I needed. So friends, sometimes being a comfort to someone else, sometimes being there in their moment where their life has been wrecked, sometimes you just need to pray. Either with them or away from them. Sometimes just being there in the room. You don't have to have a big conversation. Sometimes just being there in the room can be a wonderful comfort to someone else. Those of you who've dealt with a critical illness where you've been hospitalized, I went through dialysis after my hospitalization and it just ate me up. I was so exhausted after that, after each treatment, that it was draining for someone to come and visit me for 30 minutes. But 30 seconds worth of prayer, I appreciated that from other people. You may not always be called to visit, but you're always called to pray. And you'll know your friends, you'll know them well enough, I pray, that you'll know what they need. If they just need a friend to comfort them through sitting, sharing a meal, through praying out loud with them, or through just praying quietly for them. But for all of that to happen, friends, we have got to slow down. We've got to slow down so we can see the warning of what lies ahead. We've got to slow down so that we understand there is a need there. We've got to slow down so that we can be replenished to reach out with God's love to other people who are struggling. Somebody once said to me, whenever they see a wreck on the road, they try not to rubberneck. What they rather try and do is to pray for the person involved in that accident and the people that are taking care of them. That is of enormous help. If you stopped and the medical team were there taking care of that person, you just get in the way. But you can pray as you drive by. But you've got to slow down to see what is happening. You know, I think we need to pray. God, probably as we sit here, we are either in one of two places. We are a person who needs care and comfort. Or we are a person who's been called to comfort someone else. God, slowing down is not just a spiritual thing. Slowing down is not just a Sunday morning thing where we come into church. Slowing down, God, is a quality of life that you ask of us. So that we can be replenished with your love, and your forgiveness, and your care. So that we can go and reach out to others and share that love and that forgiveness and that care. God, would you help us to help our friends? God, would you help us to reach out to our family? And God, if we're in a place where we just feel like things are falling apart around us, where we feel like our lives are in a wreck, God, would you send someone to comfort us, to love on us, and to care for us? And most of all, God, would you give us the wisdom to know when to keep quiet and to know when to speak?